Chapter 12. Didn't see that coming. More powerful than he had ever imagined himself to be, Sam rushed down the stairs in a completely panicked state. A slender young man, barely in his 20s, had just killed 5 fully armed grown men as if it were child's play. That is exactly how he felt, like a sniveling little child. The fact that he had just killed those men was a catalyst for a train of thoughts that would only crush his mental well-being. He treated them as if they were a minor obstacle in his way. Once he decided to act, they were dead before he even knew what he had done. This only reaffirmed what Michael had told him earlier. He was missing all of his memory the night before. With all the blood staining his shirt and the rampage that he saw happening in his dream, maybe it was him. Maybe he did kill all those men. Oh God, he thought to himself. He didn't want to be a monster. He had always wanted to have strength and power over the assholes in this world, to be able to give people their just desserts. But not like this. He didn't want to kill people with a single punch. He certainly didn't want to do it without any thought behind his actions. Could he have handled the situation better? Did he have to kill all of those guards? If only he had more control over what was happening to him. If he had some time to ease into it, time to practice, maybe then he could do some good with his power and not hurt anyone. However, the time for practice was over. Doing things the right way was an option that he did not have. Maybe he should have just listened to Michael instead of being so cocky, thinking he knew that all this was a dream. If he had just taken a moment and shut his goddamn mouth, those men might actually be alive, and he might not have this gaping wound in his leg. However, this was the price he was paying for not accepting reality. He thought about the consequences that he was going to have to pay. What happens when they catch him? He was too young to go to jail. He couldn't afford a good lawyer. Sam stopped dead in his tracks. He sat down on the step halfway down the flight. Dropping his face into his hands, Sam knew that if Frank were here, he would tell him to suck it up. He would say that there was no time to be a little bitch about it now, that they needed to get out of there. But that was a thought that he didn't need to have. That one thought opened the floodgate of memory and emotion. His eyes welled up with tears at the realization that his friend was truly dead. His chin wrinkled and quivered. The memories of what happened last night raced through his head like some science fiction movie flashback. He would never be able to see Frank again. His best friend was gone. What was he going to do? What was Frank's mother going to do? She was a single mom. Frank was all that she had. He was all Sam had. He was the cool, calm, collected one, the one that kept Sam anchored. Frank taught Sam to be a good person. So what if he was a bit arrogant and stole a few things? At heart, he was a good guy. He was kind and gracious. He would have taken a bullet for Sam. And he did. All Sam could do was sob uncontrollably. Eyes smashed forcibly into the heels of his hands. He let out all the heartache that he had inside. It seemed far worse than he thought it should be. Maybe his feeling of sorrow and loss was doubled from what was happening to him. Maybe he was just unprepared for the loss of the only person that he considered a friend. Either way, it hurt deeply. As he sat there on those steps, amidst the screaming sound of the alarm, with tears streaming down his face, the memories of the previous evening flashed over him with perfect recollection. There he stood, looking down at Frank. He could see in gory detail his best friend's body lying on that dank concrete slab, a giant pool of blood flowing outward from behind his head, the tiny hole in the front, and the massive exit wound that was barely revealing itself. He watched Frank die in vivid, graphic detail. There was nothing that he could do about it. He could not save him, nor bring him back. His friend was gone. Dead. Savagery he was forced to watch himself perform from a third-person point of view was more than he could bear. All of those men, dead, slaughtered, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Even though it was his hands ripping them to shreds, he felt as though he was not part of the process. The feeling of helplessness was a feeling he knew all too well. It was like being trapped in the furnaces and watching that thing that lived there torment him as it did for all those years. Sam wept like the child he had trapped deep inside and hid away for all those years. He wept as though he were saying his last goodbyes to all those that ever meant anything to him. He knew what was waiting for him at the bottom of the staircase. Those men that he killed were not calling back on their radios. They were not answering their cell phones. Someone was about to find them. It was only a matter of time. Things were about to get very ugly. There would be a lot of cops, a lot of cameras, and lots of bullets. If the authorities caught him, they would send him to jail for the rest of his life, maybe even giving him the death penalty if they didn't kill him first. There was nothing he could do. The dream that he realized was a reality was turning into a living nightmare. Sam took a few more minutes and began to choke back the tears. He was able to bring the sorrowful sobs down to the irregular breaths that come after a good hard cry. A couple of hard pulls through his nostrils to suck the snot back into his head. He realized he must look like a shamble of a human being. There he sat, on the stairs, covered in blood both from last night and the gunshot wound to his leg. He had splatters of blood from the men he had just violently killed. His eyes were bloodshot from all the massive outpouring of tears. The parts of his skin and clothes that were not covered in blood were caked with dirt and sewer sludge. Sam had never been this low before. The evil that he experienced as a child was not even enough to bring him down this far. If he wasn't really in a dream, then this staircase was the road to hell. What was awaiting him? He had taken notice of several cameras in the stairwell on the way down. He knew someone was watching. There was no way that he was walking out of this building consequence-free. Someone would be coming after him. With the string of mass shootings that had been plaguing the country over the past few years, the police had adopted a military posture, and response time was swift. Without a doubt, they would be coming after him. Tuning in his ears again, he could hear the movement of people, the faint chatter of radios, the sounds of accelerated heartbeats in the lobby just a few floors below him. There were large trucks pulling outside and people stopping traffic. He could hear random people asking what was going on as they were ushered away from the building. He wasn't going to walk out of this building. He was either going to be shot or arrested. With one final suck of snot and a loud sigh, he rose to his feet as though the executioner was calling his name. "Well," he said aloud, "perfect end to a perfect fucking day." He took one more deep, calming breath and began to take his first defeated step down the stairs in what was looking like a long journey to face some poorly orchestrated music. As his foot hit the stair below, it made a sound like thunder. The thunder came laced with a raspy voice that was all too familiar.
"You pathetic piece of shit,"
the voice thundered.
"You are unworthy of such power."
The voice was the one from his nightmare, the one that he heard every night for years. It was like listening to James Earl Jones after 20 years of smoking 6 packs a day. The voice was reverberated throughout the concrete-encased stairwell. Sam had never heard this voice in his waking life, only in his dreams. Nevertheless, there was no mistaking it. It was Malice. But why was he hearing it now? He took another step.
"Such a weak thing has been given such a strong gift, and you have no idea how to use it,"
the voice rattled. Sam said nothing in return as he tried to figure out if he really heard the voice or was just making himself hear the voice in a sort of mortification for his recently committed atrocities.
"You have never been so strong, yet you feel guilty. Such greatness wasted on such an imbecile. Give me the reins, and I will lay waste to them like I did before. You can cry as you watch me rip their flesh from their bones."
Sam took a few quick steps to reach the landing below him, and he threw a very hard kick into the wall in front of him, causing it to crack slightly. Balling his fists by his side, Sam belted out rather loudly, "Fuck you! Go away!"
"I couldn't leave even if I wanted to, and you cannot get rid of me,"
said Malice.
"I've tried to kill you for ages. Your weakness nauseates me, and I'm forced to watch the world through you."
Sam began to trot down the stairs a bit faster. His attitude began to shift ever so slightly from sorrow and sadness to disposition and aggravation. He had struggled for years to get this voice out of his head, Now, it was drowning out his thoughts.
Do you think they're going to arrest you? They want to kill you. They almost did. If I hadn't saved you, they would have put you on your knees and then killed you.
Growled Malice from deep inside. I am not weak. I'm not. You are not real. You're just a voice in my head, Sam told him in a reassuring manner, trying to convince himself that the voice was not real. Today, though, anything could have been real.
Then what will you do, scared little boy? Will you march to your own death, or will you fight?
I can't fight. I don't want to kill anyone else.
I can fight for you.
Malice tempted Sam. I won't let you out again. I can't.
You can, and you will. You don't have what it takes to stop me. I will wait until you are weak and I will put you in that box. And then I will kill everything around you,
threatened Malice. I control you. You can't put me in that box. Not out here, Sam barked back. His level of sorrow swiftly turned into full-blown pissed off. A defiant wave flowed over him as he took in a deep breath and changed his posture. Chest up, shoulders back. The pain in his leg had all but vanished. He no longer wanted to give up. He had no desire to submit or simply accept the fate that he believed was in store for him. Malice's taunting had provoked a change in Sam's mentality. Sam began to solve the problem that was facing him. How to get out of this stairwell alive. How to escape. Michael had told him that he was twice what any human was. He was faster, stronger, and smarter. Why should he succumb to death? Why give himself over to the power of hungry jarheads that have more authority than they deserve? They don't know anything about him. They don't know how fast or how strong he is. Sam began to grin as he looked up the stairwell. He turned around and bolted back up the stairs he had just come down, bounding up sets of stairs in a single step. It was only moments before he returned to the scene of his violent onslaught. There was the soldier, still in the same position he was in when Sam left him only moments ago. Though he knew nothing would change, he still felt as though it was supposed to. Deep down inside, Sam was still clinging to the notion that this was still a dream. Sam had no more time to give to the dead men that he had killed. The instinct of survival had doubled in him, and he could do nothing to undo what had already been done. These men were dead, and there was no changing it. Quickly, but carefully, Sam darted over the bodies and the pools of blood that coated the steps like spilled motor oil. He approached the exit door at the top of the stair set. Reading that this was the entrance to the 9th floor, he thought to himself that this would be just perfect. With a quick kick to the center of the door, he sent it flying out into the rows of cubicles that covered this floor. Walking out into the office area, he felt awkward, like out of place. The awkward you feel when you're in an elevator full of suits wearing only a Speedo and one sock. The smell of aftershave and cheap perfume wafted up into his nostrils. The putrid smell was already bad enough before the craziness of these new abilities set in. Now, it was sickening. He would have to learn how to control this, too. Looking left and right to get a grip on his bearings, he saw what he was looking for. The east side of the building. In brisk pace, he walked beyond the endless sea of empty cubicles and over to the window. Below was a 9-story drop onto the asphalt. If he somehow managed to survive the fall, there was a small army down there waiting to put a few bullets in him. He truthfully had no intentions of falling. Across from him sat another glass building. 54 feet 9 inches, he said to himself. I can do that, Sam proclaimed with confidence. Looking up, he could see the 3 snipers on the roof, waiting for a chance to put a bullet in him. As the lens flare from the sniper's scope caught his attention, he could practically smell their laser dots that were wiggling around on his forehead. This was gonna be tricky. As Sam backed away from the window, the computations began rattling off in his head. Trajectory and force, impact and air resistance. Everything he thought he knew nothing about. Michael mentioned that he wouldn't instantly know new things, so he was slightly surprised by the sudden flood of knowledge coming into him. Nevertheless, he didn't have time to question it. He knew that his math was right, and this was his way out. All Sam needed now were filing cabinets. Looking around, he saw that there were quite a few to choose from. This office was full of cubicles, and he could have his pick. He walked up to the closest group of them, and he was in luck. Two of them that were the same size, large, slightly off-white, and they appeared to be heavy enough. He smashed his hands down onto the corners of them, crushing in the flimsy metal to get a firm grip. For some reason, being able to crumple the metal in his hands put a small but ever so satisfying grip on his face. Sam turned and pulled the two filing cabinets behind him. As he drew closer to the window, he began to build up tremendous amounts of speed. Just feet from the window, he flung both filing cabinets with remarkable velocity, one after the other, through the thick plate glass. Thousands of shards of glass and stacks of paper flew out the window, and Sam followed out behind them with a powerful leap. The thought that ran through his head was, "God, let this work." But the words that seeped from his lips were, "Try this on for size, fuckers." The glass and paper served as a great distraction for those below that would attempt to shoot him. Every person beneath him was busy taking cover from the falling glass and trying to distinguish Sam from the paper fluttering through the sky. The snipers on the roof were having the same problem, but Sam had counted on them being a bit sharper than that. The two large filing cabinets that were flying out in front of him would act as shields to guard him should one of the snipers attempt a blind shot and happily get lucky. Sam pulled his plan out of his ass, and it seemed to be working. His intelligence was beginning to show. He started to hear the pings and dings of bullets hitting the filing cabinets along with the whizzes of bullets flying past him from very haphazardly fired shots coming from the ground. All of this was happening in the blink of an eye. Sam's ability to process everything going on around him made it feel like an eternity. His brain was in overdrive, counting the pieces of broken glass that were flying around him. 1,534, if you counted all of them, including the tiny little shards that were smaller than the tip of a ballpoint pen. He was also calculating the direction and angle of every bullet fired at him. He knew he was not going to get hit, and his plan was going quite well. As he came to the realization that he was going to make it across the street and through the glass window of the other building, he was struck by the ramifications of his hastily approved plans and calculations. He had not taken into account that he had to land. And currently, he was traveling 42 miles an hour towards a glass-covered building, chasing two metal boxes with no idea of what lay on the other side of the black reflective glass. There was nothing that could be done about it now. The only thing that was left was to let gravity run its course and hope for the best. With the thunderous crash of glass and sheet metal, the world seemed to speed up as quickly as it slowed down. Sam and the two filing cabinets broke through the glass and tumbled across the floor of yet another field of cubicles, sending even more paper stirring through the air. As soon as his body stopped rolling like a rag doll across the carpet-covered floor, he did a quick systems check on himself. 13 bruises and scrapes, minor muscle damage, 2 friction burns, all of which were already beginning to repair themselves at accelerated rate. Beyond a few bangs and bruises, he was otherwise in great condition. "No time to hang out here," he said to himself. His ears lit up with the sound of radios full of disbelief and officers barking orders at grunts that were amazed and scared shitless all at the same time. He could see the red dots of lasers searching for something to shoot. They would waste no time coming after him. He needed to find a way out, and fast. The authorities were already beginning to rush the stairwells and the elevators. That meant that there was only one way out, the same way he came in. Sam turned around and started running towards the other side of the giant office. He had already calculated the speed, distance, and angle for his exit. Now the only thing left was to break the glass. A swift soccer-style kick of a trash can solved that problem for him. Just like before, he exploded out of the building in a shower of glass. Before last night in the sewer, Sam would have needed to roll to get rid of this much energy when landing. But today, a parked car provided all the cushion he needed. Lucky for him, there was one right below. The people that were standing on the street were not as lucky. Sam crashed down on the car's roof. Its windows exploded outward with ferocious force, slicing open dozens of innocent people. He stood on top of the roof of the crumpled vehicle, only to see them screaming and covering their wounds. Others were staring at him, trying to figure out what was going on. It was only a second before the screaming turned into a panic. Sam's actions had caused even more people to be in pain. He never thought that he would hurt anybody else while trying to save his own sorry ass. A wave of remorse swept over him for the pain that he had just caused. Perhaps more remorse than anybody else would have had in this situation. It was an accident, but it was an accident brought on by his actions. He did not want to hurt them, but he had no time to stick around and help them. While he felt an overwhelming need to rectify his mistake, his desire for self-preservation was far greater. He knew those soldiers were going to be there in just a few moments. These people would get the medical care they needed. Though he felt tremendous guilt, there was nothing he could do for them right now. He could hear the sirens and soldiers just around the corner. He knew they were going to shoot to kill. He knew that if he stayed here, more people could get hurt. He couldn't risk any more innocent people getting injured. As his heart filled with anxiety and his teeth clenched with adrenaline, his mind began to fill with questions. What is happening? Would he get to see this Michael character again? Would he see Julia again? There was only one question that needed answering right now, though. How fast could he run?